and welcome. She's been a trailblazer in more ways than one. An Australian and international ice skating champion, a Winter Olympic commentator, a magazine publisher and an ice show owner and performer. And she's here now, Belinda Noonan, or Coulthard as I knew you when I first met you.
So many moons away, but thank you so much, Malcolm, for having me.
A moon and a noon.
Yes.
Now you're a noon.
Yes.
Belinda, we did work together a long, long time ago, and name dropping on the Tall and Dean tour of Australia, the first tour. And in Melbourne and Sydney, you were skating in that show, and I was sort of comparing that show.
I remember you very well because you were backstage, and
Yes.
you had to be like backstage when we were in the wings waiting to go out.
On this little patch of ice.
Tiny little patch of ice.
With a curtain that would open and shut, and you'd zoom out into the 6 follow spots or something and blind you completely.
Well, that was such a well-attended show. So it was
Full houses every
It was
show,
full
wasn't it?
houses every night.
Amazing.
Because, you know, Jane Torval and Christopher Dean just became household names.
Yeah.
If you talk to young skaters or even young people in Australia now, they go, who? But their parents, you know,
Yeah, of
probably
course.
would remember.
They really changed ice skating forever, didn't they, with the Olympics, because they got the perfect score.
Yes, it was 6.0s across the board.
Yeah.
And here's a weird story. It was only 18 months ago for the Olympic Broadcast Service, which is, you know, does the Winter Olympics broadcasts across the world. And I had to revoice the Bolero as if I'd never seen it before, and so that they could, I think, have ownership of the voice and the vision, so that they could use it for whatever purposes that they needed it for.
Right.
And because it's one of the most iconic figure skating programs ever, and it was actually the most nervous broadcast I've ever done.
You've ever done?
Yeah, so you go live to 100 million people or however many it is
When you're
for Olympics.
commentating.
And yes, but this one, just this 6 minutes had me on edge for days before I did it. Yes, I know, because I wanted to do it justice, but I had to actually refer to the rules as they were last century.
Yes. It was last century, wasn't it?
Yes.
And in truth, it really was.
Yes.
But how ice skating's changed since then.
But to your point, and I think it was a really good point, is that they did change skating for forever, even from a musical point of view, because before then everybody would chop and change their music in their performance. They'd have a fast bit, a slow part and a fast ending, for example, and they could be 3 different pieces of music. They were the first ones that really did a whole story in one performance.
Yes.
And so from an artistic point of view, that changed not just ice dancing, but it also changed figure skating as a whole. And I think that that actually bled over into other performance sports.
Right. But just staying with that for a minute, but it also drew audiences.
Oh,
rather
absolutely.
than just people that were watching a competition.
Absolutely.
They really had a show that was just jam-packed with just amazing stuff and amazing choreography. And we both know that they rehearsed those numbers every single day.
Yes, they did. And I remember rehearsing, because I wasn't in the group numbers, we did, you know, as Australians, we did sort of breakout performances.
Yes.
Or,
Well, you and Glenn, it was
Glenn Neat.
Glenn
Yes.
Neat, yeah.
And, but for the finale bows, like we would rehearse that for at least an hour, so that I can still do the Jane Torval bow. And there's many performers, there's many skaters across, you know, the world that can, because they had attention to detail. And but I think that, you know, the audience doesn't have to know the ins and outs of every little bit of a sport or skating, or like even the World Cup that we've just watched, to actually enjoy the contest or get swept up in it. And it's
absolutely.
the attention to detail of, you know, top class world beating Olympic champions in whatever sport it is, that you can really appreciate it. And you just know that you're watching very good and excellent
The best
performance.
in the world.
Yes.
Best in the world probably for almost an ever, wasn't it?
Yes, I think that, well, sports evolved so much since then.
Yeah.
So then there's the Yuzuru Hanyu and Nathan Chen, and there's been, you know, the ice dancing has changed so much.
Yeah, but all the sports have become more of an entertainment as well.
Yes, equipment has changed.
They realise that you can make money out of it. From people watching, that is.
Well, yes, and it's diversified across all, streaming platforms and, YouTube, so you can go back and watch your favourite things that you liked whenever
True.
it was, or yesterday, whatever was yesterday,
Absolutely
if you'd
right.
missed it. So once upon a time, if you'd missed the broadcast, you'd miss the broadcast. Now you don't ever have to. Now that never happens.
Well, with videotape, when we had videotapes, I remember seeing videotapes of them, but we've talked enough about them. Let's talk about you. So I believe you started skating when you were 2.
I was.
Why?
Did. My mum, like mothers' clubs, they could go do swimming or dance or whatever it was. My mother had done a little bit of skating as a teenager, and as a lot of people do. And so she took it up after she had me and went back to doing mothers' club. And for many women at that time, it was an outlet away from the house.
Yes.
And they didn't have very much money, and so childcare was out, or babysitting then was out of the question. So she figured that it was either I scream off the ice or I scream on the ice. I may as well scream on the ice because at least I was getting exercise. So,
true, but drag the kid into the fridge.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
Yeah, so they had oranges along or chocolates, and I'd skate along and collect the goodies.
How amazing. They found boots that would fit you?
Little ones with bells on them.
Why bells?
I don't know. Maybe that's
So
all
they
that was
knew where you
available. It was the 1960s, early 1960s. Maybe there was a lot going on, and somehow there were bells on skates.
Bells on stage, isn't that amazing?
I know.
So when did it become serious for you?
I think probably around 7 or 8. I don't think I skated a whole lot more then. You're just a kid doing your thing, climbing trees, all the rest of it.
Whatever.
Yes. And a rink opened in Burwood in Sydney, New South Wales. And
Which is where you're from.
yes,
Of course.
yes. So they took me along, and Mum went back, and I just absolutely loved it. I loved the feeling of it, and when I look back now, I can see how small the sport was in Australia. It was tiny. And so any little kids that were coming along and having fun and zipping around, you were almost instantly successful from a competitive point of view,
Right.
simply because the pool was so narrow.
Right.
That was
the
very
rules
good.
weren't so ridiculous.
No, but there really wasn't very many people in the actual
doing it.
events. And so therefore whoever was in the events, you felt successful, and as a child that is a confidence builder. So the difficulty for parents and coaches now is being able to find a way to build their skills and have them remain confident.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just loved it, and I wanted to be there all the
So
time.
how does it make you feel skating?
Freedom.
I
Freedom.
absolutely understand what you mean. It is, isn't it? You feel like you're flying.
Well, it's not just that, it's also freedom of expression, if you want to
Right.
use it that way,
Yeah.
because they are, as primarily a single skater, and yes, you have the program made up for you, choreographed for you, and Mum puts you in, an outfit that you look back on 40 years later and go, what were you thinking?
How the fashions change.
Yes, but, if you don't mind, being out in a big space by yourself, then really no one can touch you because they're all on the other side of the barrier.
That's true, yes.
So that's the freedom. That's the freedom of it. And when you have essentially what I've been talking about with skaters here in Adelaide, is about the courage to be able to express yourself and to be able to put it out there, and that is what the gift to the audience is.
So obviously there's a lot of technical stuff involved.
Yeah, lots, too
A
much.
lot of people don't really understand that, skates have 2 edges on them and toe picks if you're going to be jumping and so on. They don't really realise the technicality of that. And then how on earth do you get to rotate 3 or 4 times in the air?
Well, this is the challenge that young skaters now are facing. So essentially the sport is about grace and beauty, and sometimes that is getting lost in the drive for the technical aspect.
Yeah.
So as a balance, if you compare it to gymnastics, they're shorter. So that's a graceful, beautiful sport as well that has a high degree of technical achievement.
Yeah.
So does figure skating, except it's on ice on small blades, and the performance time lasts longer. So
Yes.
for young
But the energy
people,
level can be almost as great, can't it? When
it's
your legs get exhausted before you know what you're doing.
from a physiological point of view, it's a killer because it's not a sprint and it's not a marathon. So it sits between, what they say, anaerobic and aerobic. So
Yeah.
you've got to have quick explosive power and be able to last the distance.
Yeah.
And grow. Like
And
kids.
grow and develop.
Correct.
We're going to come back and talk about more of your career because it's absolutely fascinating. The things you've done in your life are quite amazing. And we'll be back in a moment to talk more with Belinda. Belinda Noonan is our very special guest. You might call her the ice skating supremo of Australia. Do you like that?
It's different, but I'll take it.
Can I use that as a title? What is your official title, just by the way?
I don't have any anymore, which is what I really like the best. So I have been, obviously I was a competitor and then a world and Olympic coach, and then I helped run the programs and develop pathways for our aspiring Olympic athletes. So, find a way to get them there, find a way for them with their coaches, obviously, because I'm not coaching them, to make that work so that we would have Australians at Olympic Winter Games.
Being represented, yes.
Yes, and it's not easy to qualify, it's not a guaranteed. So there's all of those sorts of things. I've been an administrator, I've been something else. Of course, the commentary I still do, and I love it, because compared to doing it, coaching it, administering it, just talking about it feels like a walk in the park.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that is you absolutely know all about it. That's the beauty of it. So when I've heard your voice, on telly commentating on what's happening, I think, she really does know what she's talking about. This isn't just a sports presenter talking about anything and everything. You're talking about real knowledge.
Well, it's a weird thing to be expert on in Australia, but I've had great coaches myself as a skater. I've had wonderful collaborations with coaches and choreographers who've Olympic champions, great people, wonderful coaches in USA, Canada, Europe, England, and for skaters, I suppose, of my generation and some of the others coming through, is like we're purists about the line and the ability to actually move your blade, and so that's the difficult thing in skating. So yes, all of these quad jumps are difficult and they're feats and they are amazing, but being able to manipulate a piece of steel to your will with your body, that's the freedom.
On just water, really?
Well, yes, you're quite right.
You're just walking on water.
Because you don't skate on ice. The friction of the blade, it's actually water. That's what makes you move.
Yeah. Well, see, that's
Sorry
the
about
thing.
that technical part.
No,
I don't
because
talk about that often.
not everybody understands that they're sharp on either side with a sort of a concave surface in the middle.
Correct. See how much you know.
I know, and I'm not really...
Isn't that scary?
I can't really do anything clever. All I could ever do was skate out, have a chat with an audience and skate off again. I do a lovely T-stop, though. I can still do that.
Well done.
Yes.
6.0.
But listen, thank you very much. Always at 0.6. But your life, though, has been extraordinary as a performer as well. Because with the Leeds clubs in Sydney, how big was your tank?
Oh, it was 8 metres by 4 metres.
Okay. So this is a tiny tank by comparison to an Olympic rink.
Correct.
That you would have to freeze.
Yes. So
how deep was it? About this deep?
Oh no, much less than that.
Really?
Actually,
Okay.
yes. It was probably how many centimetres that is.
Oh, that big.
Yeah, that big. It was that big. But it'd be in auditoriums up to probably those sorts of shows, up to maybe 1,500 audience, when live entertainment was still a necessary part of the entertainment industry.
Absolutely.
A lot of that has shrunk, and when the rock bands were big as well.
Yep.
So
when people went out to take their mind off their lives, see something they'd not seen before.
Exactly. They're sort of baby, like mini Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Baby Las Vegas. So
Baby Las Vegas.
they'd be full production
these
shows.
would be the showgirls with feathers.
Correct. And so then you'd have your principal skaters, and often we'd have dancers with us. And it was really, when I look back on it now, it really was a privilege, and sometimes we'd also have live orchestras. So it's that many performers and that many entertainers that had like a continuing career and a continuing income.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the entertainment industry that doesn't really exist anymore, except maybe for stand-up comedy.
That's true, but being ice, you can't wheel in an 8 by 4 metre ice floor. You have to make it.
So the most important people in all of your operation are your crew.
Yes.
Okay, that's similar to, even a show, any sort of broadcast show, is that you can't go unless you've got the production team behind you.
But I've known these stories for some time because you've come over here to do some work with Richard Laidlaw's students here in South Australia.
Correct.
Richard's over there in the studio, and he's told me stories because you trained him, or you were his coach. But he's told me stories about lugging up the pipes, up staircases, and Belinda was there doing exactly the same.
Yes.
Then she'd put on a face with the feathers and she'd be out there.
Well, it's the glamour and the mystery of like broadcast.
Mystery.
Yeah,
I love
broadcast.
the mystery.
Yeah, television, and the same as shows. So, but the one thing for shows to be able to survive, and as a show producer or even as a newspaper publisher, as I was.
Well, we haven't even talked about that part yet.
Yes,
but we will.
That like it's called show business for a reason. Like the business part has to work for the industry to stay alive.
Yep.
And so, like I'd be coaching world championship aspirant athletes, and then Friday and Saturday, then we'd be going and doing the shows. And some funny stories, because some of the prosceniums or the stages were quite small that we were fitting onto, and there was not very much space to get into the wings. And there's 16 people in the cast, and you're doing your numbers, and this is where precision skating is so important, because you can't fall over. That's not on, and you have to have really good command of the blade, because you're in such tight spaces and you have to make the best of it. And then there's a blackout and you've got to get off. So one time I got off onto somebody's dinner table. Like I was on the wrong side of the proscenium. Sorry, excuse me. And back off again.
Amazing.
But any performer in any of the club shows back in then, which is different to arena shows.
These were like in the Leeds clubs in Sydney.
Yes.
When they were big.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's the shopping centre shows, and those were different.
That's where we first met
daylight.
here in Adelaide.
Yes.
You came over with the shopping mall show.
Yes. Warner Brothers, I think.
Amazing. On a small tank.
Oh, you're taking me on a memory lane, Malcolm.
I know, but there are people that will remember these things because it's part of our life, but it's also part of their life, because ice skating was, for a short time, it was the thing that everybody wanted to have in their shopping mall or in their showroom.
Recreationally across Australia now, today, in the 2020s that we're in, is that there are more ice rinks in the country now than there ever were back then, and there's a high participation rate for school sport, which is good. There's an increase in the hockey leagues, which is great. So there's more people. Ice hockey. Yeah. So more people are actually skating now as a recreation, and that's fine too, that's good. It's another skill.
Yeah, but it's a recreation probably like nothing else because of that. When you use the word freedom, to me the freedom is when you do that and you take off, it's like flying. It's just the best sensation because there's no sort of friction. We're used to walking. I love the people that put skates on and try and walk on the ice, but without the joy of just push off and off you go.
There's one thing in skating I've never done, and I've even dreamt about it. Like I've never skated on real ice, like every time I've been in Canada and you can. it's been an early,
outdoors.
it's been an early Thor, or something like that. Is like, can you imagine skating down to the next suburb? But I think probably how big cities operate now is like what used to happen many, like few hundred years ago, because it began as a mode of transport. That's how skating began.
Of course, never thought about that. Yes.
Yeah. So in places like, I know so much ridiculous, useless knowledge. It was a mode of transport, and the first skates were made of bone.
Right.
Yeah.
And there would have
Places
been the
like
toboggans as well, I suppose,
Well,
for people who couldn't do that.
Yeah, so the canals would freeze over,
Yeah,
and
of
that was
course.
how you could move goods or
Over the roadways.
Yeah.
Incredible. We haven't got long, but
Sorry.
I've got to ask you. No. We could talk for hours here, but I've got to ask you about the magazine or the newspaper. You moved from being all this business on ice and all your knowledge to running a newspaper.
Well,
Why?
I actually did both.
Oh, you didn't stop one to do the other.
No. I think if I hadn't been in skating, I probably would have pursued more writing or journalistic style writing, and I've always been involved. My father was in advertising, and if your dad's like a truck driver in school holidays, you go with him.
So you went to the paper.
Well, yes. Dad was an ad man, so they'd be making ads or whatever. So that's where you went. So I sort of started writing on a local paper, and I decided to start my own.
As you do, of course. We've got to take a short break, but I just want to come back to ask you your advice to anybody who genuinely feels that ice skating could be their sport or their future. And we'll be back in a tick to ask that question. We've been talking with Belinda Noonan, who I know better as Belinda Coulthard. Funny how the things you learn when you're young stay with you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So Coulthard was what, your
That was my parents'
family
name? My maiden name.
Right, maiden name.
Yes, well, that's a term you don't even want to use anymore.
No, I know, crazy, isn't it? So you are now seeing and occasionally giving your expertise to young skaters. What's probably the most important thing they need to know?
Basics, the basic skills, the edge, the lean, and the desire to want to give the performance to the audience, and then the audience give it to you right back. Because the technical aspect of the sport is now so high, they're very concentrated on making that jump work.
Yeah.
But that only works if you've got it inside a whole package. So you don't want one lolly in the lolly bag.
Yeah, I get it.
You need to have all of the different ones in there to be able...
Dressed up nicely, to want us to look at it all.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so as good as one trick is, it doesn't a performance make.
Yeah. That's
probably what's really difficult to get across to young skaters
the most
now.
important lesson,
Yes, because it becomes about them so much, where actually the appeal of the sport worldwide is only appealing if the world is watching.
Yeah.
So otherwise you're good in isolation.
Yes. But the other thing is, a skater isn't alone, because without their coach, nothing's going to happen. Is that a fair comment?
It is, but at the end of the day, when they step out, I've been in that position at Olympics.
Oh, you're alone on the ice, yeah.
No, but as a coach.
Oh, as a coach?
As a coach at Olympics, if you've done everything that you can do, it's actually the worst feeling, and go and do it one more time. You'll be great. And as soon as they skate away, that's, as a coach, when it's very difficult to contain your own emotions, and it's not about you.
No.
It's about them.
But it's everything you've given them is out there. isn't it?
Well, it's everything everybody is given them because...
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, because, you know, you need family support to be able to do it. There are other specialist coaches that you've been working with. There's the medical teams, you know, the physiotherapists and the psychologists.
It's so much
once
more
upon a
than
time,
anybody knows. Yeah.
Once upon, I
We
didn't
have to
travel
go.
with a coach. We do.
Look, they're giving us this huge wind-up over there. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. I wish we could keep chatting, and we will, but not with you. So until next time, keep yourself nice till then.